Hello, my name is Trevor Landreth. I am a doctoral student in percussion performance here at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. I am a 6-foot Caucasian male with short, blondish hair and a thick, very full beard. I am the creator and narrator of the project that you are about to watch. What you're about to see are 5 musicians of varying backgrounds performing John Cage's piece 4 minutes and 33 seconds. Written in 1952, John Cage describes it as the absence of intended sound, and ever since its inception, performance, and subsequent performances, even up to today, it has always been highly controversial, especially within the music community, often looked at more as a great work of art rather than a great work of music. The second part will be the performances. The first performance will take place on the main quad at the University of Illinois. The performers have been instructed to stand in a tight circle facing each other, so no matter what you see on the video, you'll always be able to point them out. The second performance will take place within the memorial room within Smith Memorial Hall. This performance will be a little more traditional, and the performers have been placed as if they were doing a solo performance of this piece. So you will see some of them with their hands maybe in the piano. William, our pianist, will be sitting on the bench leading the piece, so to speak. Carly will be standing much where an opera singer will stand. And Mingzi, even though she plays double bass, we did just have her sit for that performance. 4 minutes and 33 seconds is often performed in 3 movements. We have decided to perform the movements attacca, so it is just 4 minutes and 33 seconds straight of silence. In the third part, we will do post-performance interviews, where we'll ask our musicians if their thoughts have changed in regards to this piece in particular, and if they've learned anything from this experience that they will carry with them into future performances that they may do. I hope you enjoy 4 minutes of silence.
You ready?
Yeah.
All right. What is your name, and could you provide a visual description of yourself for our visually impaired viewers and listeners?
My name is Nick Evanoff. I am 5'7", male with slight tan complexion, with long-ish, very dark hair, or very dark brown hair, and a mustache.
My name is Daisy Waters. I use she, her pronouns. I am a Caucasian trans woman with relatively long red hair and blue eyes, pale skin. I'm currently wearing a long-sleeved shirt that has the University of Illinois logo and branding on it. I'm wearing blue jeans, white tennis shoes, and on my wrists I have a pink scrunchie and a bracelet made from some climbing rope that my partner got me in high school.
My name is William Murphy. I am about 5'10". I have glasses and short brown hair.
My name is Mingzi Han, and I am Asian. I'm from China. I am about 5'7", and I have black hair and brown eyes.
Yeah, my name is Carly Wingfield, and I'm 5'4" with golden blonde hair and green eyes.
Where are you from? What is your instrument and schooling?
Well, I grew up in Knoxville, Tennessee. I'm a soprano, so I'm a singer. And my schooling, I have a bachelor's in music education from Lee University, a master's in vocal performance from Missouri State, and now I'm here doing my DMA at the University of Illinois.
I'm from Frankfort, Illinois, the southwest suburb of Chicago. I am a sophomore music education student, and my primary instrument is percussion.
I'm originally from Las Vegas. I attended my undergraduate at the University of North Texas, which is in Denton, and had a really nice time there. And I'm currently pursuing my master's here in percussion performance here at Illinois. In North Texas, I got degrees in percussion performance and mathematics.
Originally, I'm from Western Kentucky. I've lived across the entire state of Kentucky. Originally coming from near Hawesville. I did my undergraduate work at Morehead State University, which is in the eastern part of the state. and then my master's was at Marshall University in Huntington, West Virginia, and then coming back to Morehead State to work as their staff pianist, and now I'm here at the University of Illinois pursuing my doctoral degree in vocal coaching and accompanying.
I play double bass, and I'm doing my doctoral degree here in UIUC.
Where is the typical setting for you to perform in? Is there a specific ensemble that you're a part of?
I usually play in orchestra, symphony orchestra, and I've been playing with a kind of professional orchestra in Indiana, and also school ensemble.
Well, I'm a part of Concerto Urbana, which is a Baroque chamber ensemble here on campus, but I perform in a variety of circumstances, singer and piano and recitals, in operas, and I've also done a lot of choir things too.
I have two primary performance settings, being football stadiums and concert halls. Football stadiums being due to my involvement in marching band and drum corps for the past 6 years, and then concert halls being in concert ensembles, whether that's wind band, orchestra, or smaller groups like steel band and percussion ensemble.
I think I'm known amongst my peers as doing all of the things. Wind symphony and symphony orchestra, and then, percussion ensemble, steel band. At UNT, there was a lot of non-Western ensembles, so I did Brazilian drumming, African drumming, Indian music, gamelan, steel band. And then here we have a hip-hop collective at Illinois. So I've had the pleasure of performing in a hip-hop context as both an instrumentalist and a rapper, and that's been really fun too.
My TA is with the Lyric Theater, so I work with a lot of the opera and musical theater performances, but the standard venue that I usually work in is one-on-one with singers and or instrumentalists in chamber music.
How do you feel as a performer when people talk or make noise during a performance you are playing in?
It depends on what kind of noise it actually is. If they're commenting on the performance, if it's audible, it may be a little irritating. If it's like a cough or a sneeze, that's life. It happens.
If it's in my recital, I will feel, well, I might not realize they're talking or something because I'm super focused when I'm playing, but in the orchestra performing, I will feel like, oh, they are kind of rude.
So a little bit of noise or is okay, especially if it's in reaction to what's going on stage. That's welcome. If the noise is incessant and because they're not aware of how loud they're being and how disruptive they're being, that can be a little bit more frustrating. But at least they're there.
You said if they laugh at something going on stage. You mean in like a musical theater setting?
Yeah, in a musical theater setting or even a recital setting. That means that they are engaged in what you're doing and they're reacting vocally to it, and that's exciting. It feeds the performance.
I feel like many times when I'm performing and there's noise in the audience, I don't always notice it because I'm focused, but I do tend to get distracted a lot just in general. So if it's like opening the large concert hall doors, I usually will notice it and then kind of have to shift my focus back to performing.
I am interested, you said you're in marching bands kind of as a primary ensemble. Do you think about that at all during that, or do you kind of focus solely on I'm here as an entertainer?
Being on the field, I feel like a lot of the sound in the stadium, kind of depending on the size, you don't really notice it as much when you're on the field. It kind of gets washed away, but you can kind of reflect afterward and see, the crowd reacted to this specific moment, but a lot of the time that's after the fact. I don't really notice it as much while I'm performing because I'm mostly focused on that.
In one aspect, if someone is interrupting a performance, when I give solo performances, I like to make them very thematic and curated and incorporate a lot of different immersive elements. So I do I do appreciate when people are mindful of the immersive nature of a lot of my performances, and they sort of, you know, give me the floor as a performer performing in a, you know, look at this thing I made setting. But I think at the same time, there is the performance art object that is the one reaching the listener. I think the thing that the art is when it comes to live performance is different from the performer's perspective and from the audience's perspective. You know, as long as you don't stand up and scream in the middle of a, you know, very emotional ballad sort of piece, or, you know, there's definitely a line somewhere. But I think that, you know, if someone whispers something to someone else, I don't think it's the most egregious thing in the world, as long as, you know, you sort of respect the context in which the music's being given, which usually is, I'm going to perform for you.
In the simplest terms you can manage, what do you think qualifies as music?
I think music is paying attention to sound, which I relate to how I think of art. I think art is the conscious decision to put your attention somewhere.
Music is usually considered a set of organized sounds, not necessarily pitches, because you get into the realm of like prepared piano pieces. And so that kind of expands the realm of the normal definition of what music is. But if it's organized together and it has some sort of purpose, and then that purpose is conveyed to the audience, then that's the basic sense, I think.
I would say the sound that can make people feel good, possibly.
All right.
Yeah.
My first thought was like organized sound, but it could simply be as organized as like putting a frame around it and letting whatever happens within that be music.
I think music is sound that is in a organized way, whether it's patterns or something like that. But I think that there has to be a certain element of intention behind that arrangement of sound to make it qualify as music.
Do you already have any thoughts regarding John Cage's 4 minutes and 33 seconds, or his music in general?
I'm honestly not the biggest fan of it. I think it's a little bit silly, but I think that's kind of due to the fact that I've been kind of brought up in a traditional music sense, kind of Western music. So like the kind of music that's a little bit out there and not as traditional tends to not appeal to me as much.
I love John Cage, both his just philosophy on life and his music. I think 433 is really a work of genius in that, kind of going back to this modern art idea of like, well, anyone could have just said this is a piece of silence, but no one had. So I think, you know, I think the genius of 433 is, it is the ultimate sort of relinquishing of control on the composer's part of what events are going to happen, but in the same way it sort of gives you the most control over defining what a performance of your piece is.
I don't know a lot of his works, but the one that gets performed the most often is 4 minutes and 33 seconds. And I think it's because every performance is going to be different. The atmosphere is always different. Chances are that the audience has either heard of it but not heard it performed, or if they have heard it performed, it's a different situation every time.
You said every performance of 433 is going to be different. Do you think the same way about like an opera aria?
Yes, because it's dependent on who's singing it. You know, it really has to fit the performer, and the guidelines that are on the page are, we try to strive to adhere to those as much as we can, but with live performance, anything can happen.
Not really, but I've heard this piece before. It's like the audience were very confused about what's going on, and they might chatting, like what's going on. Yeah.
Do you think they figured it out by the end of it, or?
Possibly, yeah. I think they did. Some of them, possibly.
I don't know a ton about his music in general, but I have learned about this piece before, and I watched an online recording of a concert performance. And so it was a concert hall, but I'm just a passive observer. And it was interesting to note the silence in the room and the stifling of coughs and of squeaky chairs and how those things erupted once the piece was finished. I found it really interesting, and I'm excited to experience it today.
In Cage's 1957 lecture, Experimental Music, he describes music as a purposeless play, an affirmation of life, not an attempt to bring order out of chaos, nor to suggest improvements in creation, but simply a way of waking up to the very life we're living. Do you agree with this statement?
I really like that statement. Music as a way of waking up and becoming aware of what's around you and aware of the magic of life. Yeah.
Not really. Kind of going back to my definition of music, where there's the part of intention behind it. I feel that personally, something that I like about music is trying to make it as perfect as possible. So I'm very focused on every detail. So kind of the idea that's something that just breaks up chaos. I don't agree with, because I think in the music that I do, I'm very intentional with everything that I do.
I especially agree with the affirmation of life part. I like to think of music as being a function of people's observations. Again, connecting to this idea of that there's a conscious observer. It's the attention to whatever sounds might be happening. And 433 is definitely the exemplar of this, because that's really all the piece is attention to the sounds that are happening.
I don't think music is a purposeless play. I think music has to have, in the very beginnings of music itself, it dealt with emotions. And that's why we have all of the writings about the doctrine of affections, for instance. So I think music always has a purpose and should be performed with purpose.
Yes, maybe. Honestly, I don't really understand what he's talking about, but I guess he has a point. Yeah.
Great. That's it?
Okay.
Okay. What did you hear? What did you want to or not want to hear during these performances?
In the first performance, obviously there's a lot of just people around the quad. And I think some of the things that I like stood out to me the most was like birds chirping, the wind, and laughter. I feel like there's kind of a lot of laughter, and it would like.
In our outdoor performance, there was definitely a lot of human activity. We were out just, in the quad on a Friday afternoon. And it sort of reminds me of this notion that kind of music is a very human thing, or human speech is kind of naturally musical. If it's the cadence of someone's laughter, or if it's a kind of a rhythmic pattern of speech. At one point a car alarm went off, and that kind of reminds me of someone had to do that musically. Someone selected notes and rhythms for this car alarm.
There was at one point early on in the piece where that group of people, they were kind of laughing, but there was pitch references to the laugh, so you could hear some of that, and that was really kind of cool. And then towards the end, there was a skateboarder that was going by, and you could hear each time he went to a new section of pavement where it kind of had a rhythmic quality to it, and so that was very interesting as well. Plus you all had all the sounds of nature. So in a sense, was it music? Yes. Was it organized music? No.
I heard people, and I heard nature, and I wanted to hear more of the nature part because the weather was good, and I just want to be more close to the nature and enjoy the weather. But the people part was also not bad because I can hear people laughing and talking, enjoy the weather, so it's joyful. But what I did not want to hear was my colleague Nathaniel. He passed by and he said, "Mingzi, you're doing good." So that made me want to laugh.
For the indoor one, I was not expecting to hear actual music, and we kind of did. And that was interesting to let go of that expectation of, no, there can't be any actual music. Well, what is it? So that was an interesting experience, yeah.
But then in the second performance, it was very quiet. So you heard, things outside of the room, like through the walls, which I thought was kind of interesting. And then I just heard my ears ringing a lot because it was so quiet.
So when we performed the piece inside, the Latin American ensemble here is having the dress rehearsal downstairs. Relatively loud ensembles, full horn section and sort of belting lyrical lines. And it started kind of as soon as we started. And I thought that was really cool because it almost gave the performance a sound source, music concrete sort of vibe.
With the indoor performance, you expect a performance space to be relatively quiet. However, there was some bleed through in that room, and I've been in there for performances before where I've heard that happen. And so you get some of that, but you also get more sounds of the air conditioning and air blowing and just building noise, general building noises. So I think that's pretty cool too.
Have your thoughts changed in regards to this piece, having performed it twice now?
Possibly a little bit. I've never thought about performing this piece, and it's actually really hard, and it's hard to interpret, just being silent and sitting there or standing there.
Yes, I think my thoughts have changed towards it. It was very different experiences indoors versus outdoors. For me, outdoors was a very meditative experience, and I was really noticing all of the sounds of life around us, the laughter, the calling, and the almost singing of the people around us that didn't realize they were singing, but they were in a way, and the birds and the wind and and our jackets and distant traffic. Then indoors, it felt more like a poised performance as a performer, holding that posture, holding that attention, holding that space for the audience in a different way. So that was an interesting experience then, to hold that space without trying to fill it with stuff.
Not really. I kind of see it more as like a social experiment almost, rather than like a performance. But I think that having done it, it kind of, it gives me a new perspective, but my opinion is still the same.
This piece has been described as a good work of art, but not a good work of music. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so. It's kind of like the social experiment idea is kind of like, especially on the quad, it was almost like a sound walk, and it was almost like meditation for me. So I think that was a valuable experience, but I don't know, how much I, look at that in terms of music.
I still love it. I loved it to begin with, just because I really just have a deep love for kind of music that engages with its own design, music that kind of makes transparent its own philosophy on music. It was really fun to perform it. I'd never sort of performed it for people. I still enjoy it.
I don't think that's necessarily changed. It's a piece that, again, changes with time with every performance. So I think that's what makes it interesting, depending on your opinions of what music actually is.
Were there any moments you found especially musical during the performance?
I think the silence is very musical. Because, when you finish playing a piece, you always want a silence before the applause. And I think that's really musical to me. So I think the whole piece is actually quite musical, I would say.
The laughter and the birds and things outdoors. Inside, it got to where I noticed my own swallowing and the stomach noises and bodily noises like that of me and the people around us. And it's like, oh, I'm gonna try really hard to stifle those things, but we're humans. And when it's really, really quiet, you start to notice that stuff.
I think on the performance on the quad, hearing people talk and just listening to the shape of their voice and when they would speak, I thought that was something that was interesting that I think I kind of overlook in conversation, but just sitting there and listening, I kind of picked up on.
There was one moment in the outdoor performance where, so there was a group of people that was maybe 20, 30 feet away from us, or however far away from us, taking sort of graduation photos. So a very jubilant sort of atmosphere. And I wasn't looking when it happened, but at one point there was a dog introduced into this little social circle. And it's very interesting to take notice of the fact of the way that people's cadence kind of changes into that sort of sing-songy baby/puppy talk, for lack of a better word. And just it made me feel very connected to kind of the ways that the music that we're maybe more familiar with has kind of arisen out of what some might call avant-garde, but really I think of it as just kind of more naturalistic and more, less consciously constructed, but more naturally curated.
And I even think in the memorial room, in that performance, there was a lot more silence, but I think there's also, I mean, that's why we have rests in music. Because it's just as much as part of the music as it is as the notes are. So silence is still a factor in how we create music.
Will the experience from performing this piece change your outlook on performing in your typical ensembles in the future?
I think I think it influences it a little bit in terms of thinking from an audience perspective, what am I expecting to hear, and as opposed to what is being performed. It's so yes and no.
I don't think so. I think it was kind of the same. Being as focused on my part as possible. In the outside distractions can get to me, but in my typical performance settings, I try to ignore as many distractions as I can, or acknowledge them and quickly move on as fast as I can.
I'm reminded of a moment in my last recital where the members of our sort of chamber group, we had a moment where we were off from each other in terms of our vertical alignment of what measure we were in, and then we got back on. And my philosophy at the time was very much like, this definitely still was the piece that was written. We didn't completely fall apart. We were still playing our parts. We still had the spirit of the piece. I think doing something like this, which is sort of the ultimate relinquishing of control and the inviting of responsibilities, kind of makes me feel even better about this understanding that, like, you could perform a very common practice Western classical sort of piece, and it might go nothing how you expected, but that's not really the point. The piece wasn't written in order to sound correct, and I didn't put this performance together in order for it to sound correct. And it sort of kind of gives me a very a mindset that's very much like, this is what it's going to be, and we did it. And sort of the most important things that contribute to the success of a musical performance are by no means playing right, even though that's kind of what we spend all our time trying to perfect.
I think it might make me more open and aware of the moments when I'm on stage but the focus isn't on me, or I'm on stage but the piece hasn't begun yet, but yet we're there and we're still in this concert and we're still holding space in a way. So I think it might help me to be more aware, and also probably freer in the moment. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's just a moment. Yeah.
I'd say for me, I will try not to judge more if people in the orchestra or in the audience made a noise or something, because sometimes it's inevitable, just like a sneeze or something. But I do enjoy the silence. So, for example, if I don't play a movement, so I just sit there, and it's better for us to be still and just listen. And that's also the beauty of performance. Listen and be quiet. Yeah.
A singer and piano and recitals in operas, and I've also done a lot of choir things too.
How do you feel as a performer when people talk or make noise during a performance you were playing in?
Just a little bit is okay, but if it's disruptive and continuing on and on, that could be, speaking of, said the microwave. No,